What's up, boxing fans? I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of May 6th. Wow, it is already May. 2017 is already 1/3 over. And man, this has been a great year for boxing. We're only 1/3 in, and we've had some great fights. So, got the new issue of Boxing Monthly. It's the May issue. It takes me a little bit longer to get it than a lot of you guys because it has to go across the pond, as they say. But check that out. My latest piece for Boxing Monthly magazine. It's about VADA. I interviewed Margaret Goodman. Thank you once again, Margaret, for having Tiffany Lamb and myself up there at that horse ranch there in Vegas to talk to you. Guys, a lot of great information. My article has a lot of specific information that I kept just for the magazine. And then I also did a 5-piece video series interview with Margaret that the videos are on my channel, Montero on Boxing, so check that out. Different information on there. So if you've watched the video series and you subscribe to the magazine, no worries. The information in here is different than what you saw in the interview online. But also some quick news. I was on Ringside Reporter, that show that they do every week out of Cincinnati, Ohio this past weekend. So check those guys out. They do great work. It's Eric in Cincinnati and then Joe Habib over on the East Coast, and Ringside Rob here on the West Coast in Northern California. They do a great show, and I called in there to talk about the great heavyweight fight we had last week and to preview the big fight we have coming up this week in Las Vegas. So enough with that stuff. We're going to skip right past news and notes because we have so much to talk about, and we're going to get right into the review of last week's action. So a lot of action last week. Before I get to the big fight in London, let's talk about some other stuff that happened. In the Philippines, Donnie Nietes scores a unanimous decision over Thai fighter Kubrat Pulev to win the vacant IBF flyweight title. Nietes wins by the scores of 117, 111 twice, and one judge had it 115, 113. You know, the thing with Nietes, he's moved up in weight a few times. He started his career at minimum weight or straw weight, 105 pounds. And he won the WBO title at 105. He won the WBO title at 108. Now he's won the IBF title at 112. So he doesn't quite have the power at flyweight. In fact, he hasn't had a real clean knockout since 2014, and even that was an accumulation type stoppage. So he was going for the big guns at flyweight. 115 is where the real big fights are. He wants some of those names. I don't know if he's going to be able to get them. I don't know how he's going to be able to compete with them. He might be a little undersized, might not have enough pop at that weight. But at 112 pounds, he's one of the best flyweights in the world right now. And he's been one of the better little fighters for quite some time, really over the past decade or so. So Nietes grabs his third title in the third weight class. Very good Filipino fighter that kind of falls under the radar of Manny Pacquiao and guys like that. But very good fighter. Good for him, grabs the third title, even though it was a vacant title against a limited opponent. On Friday the 28th in Bulgaria, Kubrat Pulev scored a unanimous decision over Kevin Johnson. Kevin Johnson has lost 7 of his last 9 fights. I remember Anthony Joshua fought him, I don't know if it was last year, it might have been a couple years ago, but I think he knocked him out in just a couple rounds. For Johnson to go 12 rounds with Pulev is kind of a moral loss for Pulev. He won every round, don't get me wrong. Styles make fights. This was a shutout, 120, 108 kind of fight. And I think one of the judges had that score. One or two of the judges may have given Johnson a round. But now with this fight, Pulev is the mandatory for Anthony Joshua. So some people would look at the way Pulev was annihilated by Klitschko a few years ago and look at how Johnson took him 12 rounds, compare what Anthony Joshua just did with Klitschko and then what he did with Johnson already, and think that, this is going to be a blowout fight. Probably will be, but styles make fights. And Pulev might, you'd hope, learn something from his fight with Wladimir Klitschko, to not just stand in front of a guy that can throw straight right hands at you all day and good left hooks. Hopefully he'd move a little bit more in his eventual fight with Joshua. I don't know, though. I think that's a massive KO for Joshua when that fight happens. But there it is. Kubrat Pulev now in a mandatory position to challenge for another title. Let's see what he could do. Saturday at Sam's Town Hotel in Las Vegas, Claudio Morero scores a first-round knockout over Carlos Zambrano, who I talked about last week in a preview for that fight. This was a PBC and Fox Sports 1 card, which it was originally slated for, I think, the Palms Casino in Vegas. Or the information I got was just wrong. The press release I got, there was a typo, but that's what I saw. They eventually changed it to this other venue, to this hotel. And Zambrano was a Peruvian fighter who was undefeated. And he had somewhat of an amateur record, I do believe. But he hadn't fought since August of 2015. Hadn't fought in over a year and a half. TMT fighter, I do believe is a Floyd fighter. But went in there against Morero, who I think is underrated. I think he's an underrated fighter. Morero is now 22-1 with 16 knockouts, Dominican fighter, 28-year-old southpaw. Definitely has an eraser in that left hand. He lost a fight a couple years back. A close competitive fight, but he lost. And, this is one of those guys that got a loss on his record, and everybody kind of forgot about him. He came into this fight, a lot of people were favoring Zambrano, but he's a southpaw. The first 1-2 he threw from that southpaw stance landed on Zambrano right in the chin. Zambrano backed right into the ropes and was done. And the thing is, it didn't really even land that flush. It kind of landed to the side of the chin. But Morero scores a highlight reel knockout in the first round of this PBC on Fox Sports 1 card that nobody was probably watching. And it's a shame because it was such a highlight reel knockout that a lot of people probably missed because there was just bigger things going on. Now, let's get to what happened in London. Let's talk about some of the preliminary fights. Scott Quigg, Luke Campbell, and Katie Taylor all won. Let's get that out of the way. Deontay Wilder made the trip over to the UK and was there in attendance. Joseph Parker, I don't know if he went there in person, but he was watching. I know he was watching live. There was some reaction videos and stuff posted on Twitter, Instagram, social media stuff. So everyone was paying attention to this fight. And it was one of those things where I think at first it kind of fell under the radar. But as the fight drew closer and closer, more and more attention was being paid to it. And people were getting excited. This is a big, historic heavyweight fight. And we've seen this happen in recent years. Time and time again, we've been promised this big epic fight. And I think back to a few years ago when David Haye talked so much trash about Wladimir Klitschko and talked himself into a massive payday he did not deserve. You're talking 8 figures with the champ, which was Klitschko, after Haye had done absolutely nothing but barely beat Nikolai Valuev. I don't know if Haye beat Valuev better than Evander Holyfield did when he got robbed against Valuev. But that was a fight that was billed to be this big, big thing, and David Haye didn't deliver. And Wladimir Klitschko won all 12 rounds against David Haye. It was a complete dud. And we've had a few of those in recent years on the heavyweight scale. This lived up to the hype. 90,000 fans showed up, and it was at Wembley, of course. I've talked about all this stuff, but going back to Klitschko against Haye, Haye couldn't deliver Wembley. He said he could. He said he could offer a big, big venue there in London to do a big, big crowd. They chopped up the numbers. They couldn't. That fight had to go to Germany. Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua, they could deliver Wembley. And 90,000 fans showed up. This thing was broadcast in 140 countries. I called into several shows talking about this fight, both previewing and reviewing it, just talking about the magnitude of it. I did a prediction video on it. Real funny thing about the prediction video, it had maybe 7,000 views before the fight. It's got about 13,000 after the fight. So A lot of people will go back and watch those prediction videos after the fight so they can go, aha, you screwed up or whatever. That's just, that's the nature of YouTube. Funny how that works. The views have doubled since the fight happened. But look, man, this thing, the action that took place in the ring was so important. Okay, I did a video talking about what happened and I gave my whole breakdown. So look for that. I'm not going to go round by round in this episode of TNC. I already posted a video about it. But the back and forth, the baptism under fire for Anthony Joshua, the silencing the critics by Wladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua to a degree, the heart, the determination, getting off the canvas, both guys being out on their feet almost, being done, looking tired and dead at certain points, but finding the will to continue. And in the end, what was supposed to happen, what's happened time and time again throughout boxing history, going back centuries, is what happened. Youth was served in that 11th round. Going into the 11th round, I had Klitschko ahead 95-93. So did Judge Steve Weisfeld. Don Trella somehow had Anthony Joshua ahead 96-93. He should know better. He should be embarrassed of that score. It's a disgusting score. Nelson Vasquez had it 95-93 for Joshua. A slightly better score, but also the wrong score in my opinion. I've said this time and time again since I've talked about this fight. Anthony Joshua was getting credit for a lot of punches that just didn't land. And Wladimir Klitschko is not getting enough credit for making Joshua miss and rolling with punches, sliding with them, parrying punches. Just wasn't getting enough credit for the work he did. A lot of people were saying, he looked very elusive. He looked like Vitaly. Well, he kind of did look like Vitaly in that fight, just better. And, I'll probably end up doing a rant video at some point comparing Wladimir to Vitaly because a lot of people still talk about Vitaly Klitschko and they love him and he's heralded in this high esteem for a loss against Lennox Lewis, for taking some big punches in that fight and for buzzing Lewis in the second round, but not getting him out of there. And I hear people continuously bash Wladimir about not being able to take a punch. He took way harder punches in this fight against Anthony Joshua, a kid in his physical prime, than Vitaly took against Lennox Lewis 15 some odd years ago. And Wladimir Klitschko put Joshua down, and he was trying to get him out in that 6th round. He just couldn't do it. The reflexes were a little dulled. He's just a half second slower than he was a few years ago. His punches were a couple inches too high on the head. The big right hand he landed in the 6th round was up here, not here. Watch the right hands Klitschko lands on Ruslan Shagayev, Alexander Povetkin, Ibragimov. Those guys, they land here. They don't land here. They land here. Prime Wladimir Klitschko wins this fight by knockout with the first massive right hand that he lands. But I'm repeating a lot of the stuff I said in that video I did Sunday morning after the fight. Guys, this was a passing of the torch. Tyson Fury's not the man in the heavyweight division. He wasn't the man about 6 months or so after that fight with Klitschko when he had all kinds of drug testing issues before that fight happened with UCAD and after that fight when they were doing negotiating the rematch with VADA. He's got a bunch of issues. He probably weighs over 20 stone right now, and he has to clear up a bunch of stuff with UCAD and VADA before he could even get licensed and back in the ring, okay? Tyson Fury ain't the man. It's Anthony Joshua. And this passing of the torch between a faded former champion in his physically prime but still inexperienced heir apparent, this passing of the torch, you could take it back to Tyson, Holmes, Ali, right? And you could just keep on going down the line. Marciano Lewis, all the way down. And what's so great about this is that it lived up to the hype and everything else, but it passed that torch. And Wladimir Klitschko, I tweeted about this. I'm showing a lot of Wladimir Klitschko love in this video. I get it. And this is Anthony Joshua's moment. I understand that. We're going to be talking a lot about Anthony Joshua for years, guys. Klitschko, this probably was his last fight. He might have one farewell fight in the Ukraine late this year or early next year, and then that's it. So for me, this is a little bit, some appreciation for what Klitschko did, because other fighters recently, sticking with the heavyweight division, you look at Lennox Lewis, he didn't pass that torch. He barely scraped by Vitalia, then retired while he knew, hey man, I'm right there at that edge. Didn't pass the torch. Floyd Mayweather fought in controlled situations for years and cashed out against Manny Pacquiao and walked away. He never did that passing of the torch fight. Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather both had the torch passed to them by Oscar De La Hoya, who fought everybody. Bernard Hopkins stuck around and passed the torch to Sergey Kovalev, even though he wasn't a champion at that time, really. He was that name that Sergey Kovalev needed, right? And, Andre Ward stepped in and kind of benefited from that, but that's another rant for another day. But there are so many fighters who have done that. They took that challenge when they didn't have to. And for Wladimir Klitschko, look at the record of his last 10 opponents, right? Or just the last 3, 4, 5 opponents. Several of them were undefeated. Several of these guys had quality amateur careers and put together some great amateur work. He lost the last 2. He lost against Joshua. He lost against Tyson Fury. But look at the records of those fighters, what they did in the amateurs, what they have done in the pros, and what some of them will continue to do in the pros. And Klitschko didn't have to do that. He was a brand in Germany. He could have fought in controlled situations over there against faded names like Shannon Briggs, who was calling him out for years. Guys like James Toney called him out for years. He could have fought Evander Holyfield. People over in Germany, over in Europe, he could have went to Ukraine, to Russia. People over there would have bought that fight. They would have packed stadiums over there. Not 90,000, but 30, 40, maybe 50,000 over there. Okay, and he could have made millions of dollars doing that because he was a name. And he could have said, guys, I've earned this, right? Kind of what Miguel Cotto's doing right now, right? What so many other fighters have done. He didn't do that. He came back to fight the young lion. And let's give it to Anthony Joshua for passing that test. Anthony Joshua is not your typical 19-0 fighter. Most boxing prospects who are 19-0 are 20, 21, 22 years old. This kid's going to be 28 years old this year. So he's physically prime. Emotionally, he's mature, more mature than your typical 19-0 fighter. But AJ's not a prospect. And he wasn't a prospect in this fight. He was definitely a real contender. And now he's the man. He's passed the test. And to show the level of emotional balance, to keep everything together under that pressure, especially after that 6th round, to stick around for a few rounds to get his wits back together and then make adjustments in the 9th and 10th round, start going to the body, start shooting uppercuts, and catch the old man slipping in the 11th round with that beautiful uppercut that I think is going to be a highlight reel we're seeing for years to come. Man, what a performance from Anthony Joshua. And Doug Fisher actually tweeted something like this. I thought it was very well said, and I'm going to butcher it. I'm paraphrasing. Doug is way more eloquent than I am. But he said something like, if Anthony Joshua goes on to become a great heavyweight, he has Wladimir Klitschko to thank for it. And I agree. We're going to trace that lineage back to this fight. This is where the legend, if he becomes a legend, the legend of Anthony Joshua was born. Saturday, April 29th, 2017 at Wembley. Just an outstanding performance by both men. And how about this too? There were no chairs thrown at press conferences. There were no swear words. No one wanted to eat the other guy's children. There were no post-fight hotel lobby brawls. Both of these guys acted with class and dignity and respect before the fight, during the fight, and after the fight. And what the hell is so wrong with that? Why is that a bad thing? Why do I see things on Twitter saying these guys are soft, they're boring, all the crap we've heard for years about Klitschko? I've seen some of it about Joshua. There's no bomb squad, all this kind of crap. It's just two gentlemen, two professional athletes putting it all on the line in the ring. and making a fight for the ages. What the hell's so wrong with that? Why can't we have more of that in this damn sport? I just, man, I'm so excited and happy for the heavyweight division right now. And I'm not the only one. Even mainstream media outlets here in America that completely ignored the fight before it happened, some of these guys must have got the memo that it was actually a really great fight because it was on SportsCenter. And not just, SportsCenter, you have your TV, right? And they're talking about college volleyball or something stupid, Conor McGregor. And then at the bottom of the screen, there's the little, ticker. Usually if there's a big pay-per-view fight like Canelo-Chavez after that fight, there's probably going to be a little ticker. Canelo wins, late knockout. That's it. This was a segment. They were showing highlights. And let's give it to Eddie Hearn and Matchroom for giving up some of those highlights, for being smart and saying, hey, let's not be pricks and say, no, these are our highlights. You don't have rights to these. For letting the media outlets use them. Maybe some American promoters could take note of that. But ESPN SportsCenter, prime time, was showing highlights from a heavyweight boxing match that didn't take place in America. Wow, imagine that shit. On top of that, several ESPN shows were talking about this. Guys who don't know anything about boxing were talking about it in their shows on the radio, on TV. UFC fans, casual boxing fans and UFC fans that don't know dick about boxing liked this fight. So guess what? Here's a super fight that wasn't on pay-per-view in America, featured two gentlemen and not a good guy and a bad guy, someone wearing the white hat and someone wearing the black hat and all this typical crap you see here in America too much. Here was a fight that actually built fans. Do you think any one of those 90,000 people who went to that fight won't be a boxing fan for the rest of their life? They're all going to be. How many millions of people that watched this fight in the 140 countries it was broadcast in were made into fans? Even if they're not going to be diehard boxing fans, they're going to be diehard Anthony Joshua fans and respectful of Wladimir Klitschko. This is how you do it. Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor. This is how it's done. I'm so happy with this, man. Real quick, production value. Ring walks were awesome. AJ comes out and there's literally an A and a J on fire and stands in front of it. Because that Wembley Stadium's so massive, the ring walks must have took 5 minutes. The drama, just the way it was done was so smart. Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, they are the best promoter in boxing. And probably the best promoter, you know what, of the last 30, 40 years. I'm just going to put that out there. They're probably the best promoter in a half century, what they're doing right now. Because what they're doing is elevating the sport. They're not just making a shitload of money short term and thinking about what's best for me and milking and ripping off the fans they have. They're actually elevating the sport and building fans. And some of the other big-time promoters during the 80s and 90s here in America didn't think that far ahead. What Eddie Hearn's doing, man, check this out. Anthony Joshua, he's from London. He won the Olympics, the gold medal in London. All of his fights have pretty much been London. And this mega event took place in, where? London. They've built a brand there. They've been consistent there. Consistent venue. Or I know he fought, I think, in Manchester recently, but close by, okay? Consistency. Consistent network. They have a deal with Sky over there. They've done a deal with Showtime over here to air some of his fights over here. But consistency across the board. And you look at some of the American promoters, again, look, I'm an American, I'm a proud American, guys. I served in the United States Marine Corps. I'm proud of where I'm from. But we have issues in American boxing right now. And it's not just that London or England is kicking America's ass and everything, because Frank Warren's shows aren't like Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn and Matchroom are doing it better than even other British promoters. They're just doing it better than everybody. Yeah, you got to have the product, and AJ is a product. But they took a gamble here with the Klitschko fight. It almost didn't work out for them, right? Even though I think if AJ lost this fight, it still would have elevated him. It elevated Klitschko in a loss, and he didn't need to be elevated anymore. He's an all-time great. But the consistency. AJ has fought 2-3 times a year. He's fought in the same venue, same network, building that up. Now, he is the only fighter in the world right now. The only martial artist. Yes, I'm including UFC in this. Anthony Joshua is the only fighter in the world that there are probably 5 to 10 fights he could do at Wembley and do a crowd of at least 50,000. If Deontay Wilder came over there, Joseph Parker, a Klitschko rematch, Tyson Fury, right? Even if Kubrat Pulev comes over there and they fight in Wembley, you think they won't do 40, 50,000 for that fight? And that's just a mandatory fight. The kid's a star, and it was built the right way. This is how it's supposed to be done. Now for Klitschko, there is a rematch clause if he wants it. Personally, I think a rematch favors AJ because we saw him grow up and mature in this fight. Wladimir gave it absolutely everything, and you have to be gutted for him after really he truly was obsessed about winning this fight. He did everything you could ask a 41-year-old former champion, well faded past his best, to do. And it just, in the end, wasn't quite enough because he fought someone that is probably going to be pretty damn special that we're going to be talking about for a long time. So, but he walks away into the sunset now. You know, it's a shame to go out with a loss if he does, but there's rarely any happy endings in boxing. This is the most unforgiving of sports, right? You don't have that moment where, you know, Peyton Manning in the NFL wins that Super Bowl and goes out on top. That just doesn't happen much in boxing. So if I was Vlad, I probably would not do the rematch. I probably would do a farewell fight in Ukraine or something like that, or maybe in Germany where those fans have been so good to him. But Ukraine, that would be like a homecoming. Maybe do something like that. That would be his 70th pro fight, and then he could walk into the sunset with Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Fame credentials, and knowing that he helped build the next great thing, and not just in the heavyweight division, but in the sport. So great job, Anthony Joshua. Great job, Wladimir Klitschko. Great job, UK fans and the scene over there. It's just awesome. You know, I'm proud to work with a British fight magazine because in the Western or in the Eastern Hemisphere, you guys are running the sport. In the Western Hemisphere, the Mexican-American fans, I think, are carrying the sport here. But over on that side of the world, it's clearly the UK scene. And the two hotbeds of boxing right now are London and Los Angeles. That's it, man. So a lot of great action last week. Action that we're going to be talking about for a very, very long time, I think. Let's get into a preview of what's coming up this week. Oh, and before I get a bunch of comments about my fingernails being dirty, I was working on the car today, so that's all it is. It's not whatever weird comments some of you are going to come up with. I don't know if you can even see my fingernails, but whatever. They're dirty. Yeah, I got to clean them. I was working on the car today, so shut up. Tuesday, it is a Fox Sports 1, PBC on Fox Sports 1 card. Ivan Redkach goes up against Argenis Mendez. This is from the Sportsman Lodge in Studio City. Really, I don't know, probably 5-6 miles up the 101 highway from where I live in downtown Los Angeles. I've never been to that venue. Need to check it out. They do some fun cards there. Redkach is an entertaining fighter, an LA-based Ukrainian lightweight. He's lost a couple, but he wins more than he loses, and he always makes for a good fight. So that should be a fun headliner on that Fox Sports 1 card for PBC. Now on Friday, the 5th, at the Cosmo in Las Vegas, another Golden Boy Promotions on ESPN fight, or card I should say, headlined with Yuriorkis Gamboa. Now, I like this because he just fought 2 months ago. Didn't look great, but he had a lot of ring rust. So Golden Boy getting him right in the ring 2 months later. I like that they're keeping him busy. Let's see if he looks better in this fight. He's going up against an opponent who's lost 2 of his last 4 since 2014. Not a very busy opponent. Also on this card, featherweight prospect Abraham Lopez and middleweight prospect Yamaguchi Falcao. Both of them are undefeated. For Falcao, he's a Brazilian fighter, fought in the World Series of Boxing. Him and his brother, and covered those guys in the World Series of Boxing. Interesting fighters with some good quality skills. I don't necessarily know how it's translating over to the pro game though. I'm still seeing some amateurish habits. Let's see if Yamaguchi Falcao can work some of that out. Also on Friday in Reno, Nevada, Jose Carlos Ramirez, who is a prospect out of a small town right in central California, maybe 200 miles north of Los Angeles, kind of close to Fresno, Bakersfield, in that area. 140-pounder, good-looking prospect, 19-0 with 14 knockouts, and he already does crowds up there in, I think they call it the Central Valley, up there in Central California, where it gets hotter than hell out there in the summertime. So he already is a headliner up there and does really, really good crowds. He's going to be fighting in Reno, Nevada. Check that out if you can. I'm not sure where that's being aired. I don't think it's on TV, but I think there's going to be a stream of that somewhere. I'll try to find that and tweet that out. I do think there will be a stream available. Now, on Saturday, Joseph Parker going up against replacement opponent. He was supposed to face Hughie Fury, but obviously Fury hurt his back. So now he's going up against Razvan Cojanu, who was KO'd by Donovan Dennis in 2015. Donovan Dennis, and that was during the Boxino tournament for ESPN. Dennis is 6'4", 79-inch reach. Joseph Parker is 6'4", 76-inch reach. So similar size and everything, and Parker's a step or two above what Dennis is. So I expect Parker to get a knockout here in 6 rounds or less. He's coming off the biggest layoff of his career, I think. Hasn't fought since late last year. So probably, just off the top of my head, 5 or 6 months since he's fought. So might have a little rust early on, but you got to expect Joseph Parker to get a stoppage win here in the middle rounds. If he doesn't, that's bad. That's a bad look for him. He needs to go in there and make a statement, especially considering what Anthony Joshua just did. If he wants to stay on the consciousness of boxing fans, for heavyweight boxing fans, Parker needs to make a statement here. So that's it for all the action. Everywhere else, the big card this Saturday is in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena, where I will be covering this one. So for those of you who are coming to Vegas this week, get at me, tweet at me, message me. Let's have a beer. I'll be hanging out. I might cover that Friday night card. I'm not sure yet. I have a couple of shows that I'm doing, and I'm calling into a couple shows and stuff, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to cover that Friday night card. But I'll be out and about this week in Las Vegas, so come find me and let's have a drink. Let's party. It's going to be a great atmosphere, man. It's going to be a fiesta out there. Let's talk about the actual fight card, all right, the pay-per-view card. And I do believe the preliminary undercard bouts are going to be streamed live on Golden Boy's, or no, it's HBO Boxing's YouTube channel and on Ring TV. So the first few fights of the whole entire card will be streamed for free on YouTube. So go check that out. But the pay-per-view card opens with Joseph Jojo Diaz going up against Manuel Avila in 2 fighters who are undefeated and have very similar looking records. But when you look behind the record, you see that Diaz is the more battle-tested fighter. Joseph Diaz is 23-0 with 13 knockouts. Manuel Avila is 22-0 with 8 knockouts. Avila's fought at Belasco on those LA Fight Club cards a few times recently. Diaz, he fought on those early on, but he's upgraded to HBO. Unfortunately, he's kind of been shelved on some of these pay-per-view cards. He could use a little more exposure. And hopefully after this, later in the year, we see Diaz on an HBO After Dark broadcast or headlining one of these Golden Boy on ESPN cards. I think they need to get him some more exposure. But these 2 records look similar. Diaz has fought good fighters like Jason Velez, right? In the amateurs, he fought guys like Oscar Valdez. Got a win over Oscar Valdez to get himself into the Olympics. So he's fought the better opposition. He's also fought on the big stage before. Last September, he fought in AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas on the Canelo Smith undercard in front of 50,000+ fans. So Diaz is used to this. He's used to fighting on the big stage, and he's fought the better opposition. So even though these 2 records look similar, I think Diaz is the more proven, experienced fighter, and I look for him to win big in this fight. I don't know if he's going to score a stoppage. He doesn't hit very hard. It would make a statement if he did. If he stepped on the gas and got a late stoppage, that would make a statement. Remember, Oscar Valdez just fought a couple weeks ago in a very, very good fight against Manuel Meridiaga that a lot of people didn't see. More people are going to see this fight with Diaz. But Valdez, those two guys get compared a lot. And if Diaz wants to keep pace with him, he needs to make a statement in this fight. So my official prediction on this one, Diaz by decision. But if he gets a stoppage late in this fight, that makes a statement. Next up, Lucas Matthysse taking on Emmanuel Taylor. Now, Matthysse hasn't fought since October 2015 at StubHub Center against Victor Postol, where he was just outboxed, beat up, and injured and stopped. Postol busted open Mathisse's eye, and Matthysse probably could have fought on, but I think wisely said no mas. Now, a younger Matthysse probably would have fought on, but he had been through several wars at that point and probably just think, hey, this isn't worth it, and he stopped the fight. So he hasn't fought since then, been a year and a half. It's so interesting because we just talked about Wladimir Klitschko earlier in this episode and kind of went through a similar scenario minus the injury, and he didn't quit. He took on the young lion. I don't know. I'm just so impressed with that heavyweight fight, man. I'm going to stop my man crush now. But for Matthysse, coming off that year and a half layoff, the reason why I thought about Klitschko, I don't think Matthysse is going to look as fresh and as motivated as Klitschko looked. Now, he's not going up against a killer, but Emmanuel Taylor isn't trash. Emmanuel Taylor is 20-4 with 14 knockouts. He's fought good fighters like Chris Algieri, Adrian Broner. He's not an opponent. And I think that Taylor could crack a little bit. And if I'm him, I'm going right for that eye. If I'm Taylor, I'm punching right at Mathisse's eye and busting that thing open. Matthysse, best chance for him, I think, is an early big knockout. This thing goes past 6-7 rounds, I think that starts to favor Taylor because I don't know how much gas Matthysse is going to have in the tank after having not fought in a year and a half. Unlike Klitschko and guys like that, or Bernard Hopkins, guys who, when they're off, they live in the gym, they work out, they live a healthy lifestyle. Matthysse will party a little bit. He'll party it up. He's not Marcos Maidana level partier, his Argentinian countryman, but, he'll live it up a little bit. So how, has he stayed in shape for the past year and a half? Has he been consistently in the gym? Or did he just kind of get bored after being off for a year and thought, man, I want to make a comeback? We'll find out. But I'm telling you right now, my pick would be Matthysse by early mid-rounds, maybe stoppage if he catches him. But if this thing goes past the middle rounds, Taylor could win a decision here and score an upset and retire Matthysse. Don't be surprised, all right? Next up, David Lemieux versus Marcos Reyes. And this fight is such a layup, I don't even know if it's worth talking about. Lemieux is coming off the KO of the year in March against Curtis Stevens. Reyes has lost 3 of his last 6, going back to 2014. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. beat him in a super middleweight fight in 2015. All in all, though, I like what Golden Boy Promotions did here. They put Lemieux in the ring just a couple months after that big performance against Curtis Stevens to keep him busy. Kind of the same thing they're doing with Gamboa. But also, I think that putting him on this card was Golden Boy Promotions playing a little bit of chess with Tom Loeffler and K2 Promotions for Gennady Golovkin. I think that Golovkin and his team were thinking about doing that Saunders fight, and even if the Saunders thing fell through, they were still thinking about fighting June 10th in Kazakhstan because of the money on the table and staying busy and all of it. And just to fight during the World Expo with all of his fans over there, I know Golovkin and his team wanted to do that. But they were kind of waiting to see what Golden Boy was doing. And believe you me, there's talks going behind the scenes between those two parties, even right now. Not every day, but they're communicating. And this was a little bit of a chess move. This was, Oscar De La Hoya just moving one of his pieces on the board by putting Lemieux on this card because he's already got the knockout of the year. He's going to score another knockout of the year contender here against Reyes. A Mexican fighter, I believe, in front of a bunch of Mexican-American fans with 2 Mexicans headlining, in the main event. It sets it up perfectly for a Canelo-Lemieux fight. So all things considered, I think that this was a smart move by Golden Boy. And there's several reasons why the Golovkin-Saunders fight didn't come together. And, you know, last week I should have chose my words better. But this was one of them. I absolutely think, not a main reason. I think the main reason is Golovkin and his team just decided to rest, you know. But there were several reasons, and this little chess move by Golden Boy was one of them. Anyway, look for Lemieux to score a huge freaking knockout here. The only way David Lemieux could screw this up is if he comes in not giving a shit and misses weight. We've seen him do that. Comes in looking fat and sloppy. Comes in just a little overconfident and not focused. Hopefully he comes in here focused. If he's anything near what he was against Stevens a couple months ago, he scores a massive knockout in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round in what will be a fun fight while it lasts. Because Lemieux, he can be hit, and Reyes will tag him. Now, main event. Okay. Saul Canelo Alvarez, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. 164.5 pound catch weight. And Chavez tweeted out last week that he's at 169.5. Some people don't believe it. I believe it. He looks about it. He's working with Memo Heredia. He's working with Nacho Beristain. He's got his father around. They're getting along right now. I think he's really, really making an effort. And I think that here are the X factors, okay? Well, before I get into that, some notes. And this stuff you guys already kind of know, but when this fight was first signed, people thought, oh, this is a blowout. Chavez Jr. hasn't fought this light since he fought Sergio Martinez in 2012. He only had one fight in 2016, and that was against a German, Dominic Breached, right? Against a complete journeyman. He went all 10 rounds with Reyes, the guy Lemieux's fighting, back in 2015, like I just said. And before that, he had a very, very tough fight with Andres Fanfara, who put a whooping on his ass. So people saw all this and thought, oh, this isn't even worth watching. But he's 6'1", 73-inch reach. Canelo's 5'9", 70-inch reach. He's a bigger, stronger, physically grinding kind of fighter. In a way, he plays right into Canelo's strengths because Canelo's a natural counterpuncher and wants you to come to him. But in a way, you know, Canelo is always, I'm not going to say avoided, but he hasn't really fought many big punchers. And he hasn't really fought many fighters much bigger than him. So maybe there's weaknesses there that Chavez could expose, right? He might play into some of those as well. It'll be interesting to see that. Here are the X factors. Here's what you need to look out for, okay? Weigh-in, obviously. This is probably the most anticipated weigh-in that I can remember in the past decade. And I'll be there. I'll probably post a quick little rant video with my cell phone. It won't be the best quality, but I'll let you guys know what I saw after the weigh-in, so look out for that. Tweet the shit out of it. But the real X factor here is rehydration. There's no rehydration limit. Let's see how much Chavez Jr. rehydrates. If he only gains 5, 8, even 10 pounds after the weigh-in, then I think it's very, very clear he overtrained and he shot the shit and will be a shell of himself in the ring. However, if he rehydrates 15, 20 pounds come fight night, we got a fight on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. And don't be surprised if it goes all 12. I'm dead serious. You know, you can safely weigh in about 10% under your fight weight 30 or so hours before the fight and gain that back safely. So 164.5 off the top of my head, 10% of that, 16 pounds. So potentially, I think Chavez could make that weight and weigh 180 to 185 on fight night and do that in a healthy way and have something to bring in to the ring Saturday night. And if he can do that, watch the odds shift in Vegas, man. I mean, just once you start hearing what he weighs and all that, you're going to start seeing I'm telling you, Friday afternoon up until fight night, the odds are, the bookies are going to be going nuts with all the weight rumors that go around and everything. It's going to be crazy. But More than any of that stuff, guys, the real X factor here is pride. These fighters do not like each other because they've been compared to each other for so long. Canelo is a fighter that came up the old-fashioned way in boxing, right? Came from nothing, made himself out of nothing, and has proven himself to be a star and a top-level fighter by this point. Chavez has always had a chip on his shoulder because he's lived in his father's shadow. And at first, he was probably getting more love than Canelo, but the tables have turned, and Canelo's become this big, big star, and Chavez is kind of this afterthought and seen as this punk, who, a spoiled brat. And he probably looks at Canelo with some disdain and some jealousy. Then there's also the dynamic that Canelo's been taking soft touches recently, and Chavez has been talking trash about that, right? He's saying, hey, man, when I went up to 168, I fought one of the toughest fighters, Andres Fonfara, you know? I fought the best middleweight at the time, Sergio Martinez, right? He's talking about that stuff. To be fair, Canelo did fight Floyd freaking Mayweather, the best fighter pound for pound at the time. So, but that trash talk, right? That's got fans going kind of two different ways, but it's also got the fighters really not liking each other. And there's no official title on the line in this fight, but this is for pride. I talked earlier about Western Hemisphere, it's the UK fans really controlling the sport and holding it up and really elevating it. Here in the Western Hemisphere, it's the Mexican and Mexican-American fans. Hands down. No one comes close. And Mexican-American fans will watch a 4-rounder with prospects with as much passion and enthusiasm as they watch a massive, massive pay-per-view fight like this. So that pride, right? That whole fight week, everyone's going to be going crazy in Vegas. It's going to be this party atmosphere, and it's going to build up more and more for that final, the media workouts, the press conference, the weigh-ins. The weigh-in's going to be nuts. There's a little fiesta area outside T-Mobile Arena, and there's going to be all kinds of beer tents and music. It's going to be crazy, right? That's all going to feed this thing, and it's going to correlate into the ring Saturday night. And I'm telling you, whatever Chavez has left after draining himself down to make that weight, he's going to give all of himself. I think he realizes this is a chance for him to exercise his demons. And he's going to be bringing all that because of the pride factor. And Canelo knows that he can't lose this fight. He's got massive paydays down the line. He's got this big super fight down the line later this year. He's also got millions of Mexican fans watching this. And this might not matter globally, this fight. This might not be heralded as a historic fight years down the road. It doesn't mean anything as far as titles go. But for these fighters, their culture, their home country, their pride, all of that, this is a big, big deal. And I think that it's going to be a fun fight. I really, really do. I'm not just trying to sell this thing. I don't have to pay for it. I get to go for free. So whether you buy it or stream it, hey, do what you got to do. If you watch it on Facebook Live, do what you got to do. But watch it. I think it's going to be worth watching. I think it's going to be crazy, crazy energy. And I think that the energy we have with Joshua Klitschko is going to kind of feed over into this thing. We're going to have 2 back-to-back weeks of crazy, high-energy crowds, sold-out venues, people screaming, the 2 most passionate fan bases in the world in all of martial arts, regardless of discipline, not just boxing. What more can you ask for? And like I said earlier in this episode, the year's only about 1/3 over, guys. If the right things happen over the second half of this year, holy shit, 2017 is going to be one for the books. That's it for this week, guys. Find me in Vegas. Let's have a beer. I'm Michael Montero. I'll see you at the fights.